This video is sponsored by ExpressVPN. Oh, Breath of the Wild, how I love thee. Except for when you're vague and confusing, then it's more of a love-hate thing. Oh, don't get me wrong, I love stumbling across a hidden reference or Easter egg just as much as the next guy, but I'm not the next guy. I'm me, a theorist. And a theorist looks at all these landmarks and naming schemes and, giant mushroom things and goes, wait, what the heck? Why is any of this here? And what does this mean for Breath of the Wild's backstory? And one of the most hotly debated pieces of vague Breath of the Wild lore would be the infamous 8th heroine of the 7 heroines. No, I did not mess that up. You heard me correctly. Of the legendary group of individuals called the 7 heroines, there exists an 8th member. Huh, well, surely it's explained in game, right? No, it isn't. Now, if you've ever been curious about said 8th member of the 7, you've probably stumbled across Nintendo Black Crisis's very successful 2-part theory on the existence and identity of the 8th heroine. And if you haven't yet, go watch it. Like, for real. Because if there's one thing I'm not gonna do in this video, it's cover who I think the 8th heroine is. Nah, I'm just playing. You kidding me? I cover everything. Of course I'm gonna let you know who I think the 8th is. But to be honest, I want to really focus on another rather puzzling detail about the 8th's statue. And that would be the matter of her weapon, as in her sword. As in, where is it? Actually, we know where it is. It's way up on the peak of the Gerudo summit, just casually stabbed into the ground, facing the sunrise. And a Lionel, but that's besides the point. My question is this: how in the world did this get all the way up here? And who would have moved it? And why would they have moved it? If you find yourself even remotely curious about any of these questions, well, you're in luck. I'm about to speculate the crap out of this thing, so let's get started. And hey, real quick, would you do me a favor? Take a look at that subscribe button right there below this video. Yeah, that one. Is it pressed? No? Well, you're gonna want to go ahead and subscribe to the channel with those notifications on because there's a lot of really cool Nintendo stuff coming. And be sure to give this video a like if you enjoy the content. Also, because I'd like you to help me take over the world. Okay, cool. Anyway, moving on. Like I said, I am actually going to go ahead and give you my 2 cents as far as the identity of the 8th heroine goes before we get into the whole sword thing. Now, without spoiling too much of NBC's theory videos, I'm gonna spoil them a little. I can only pray he forgives me. NBC concludes that there are 2 possibilities to the identity of the 8th heroine, Link and Ganondorf. And I actually 100% agree with that, given all the evidence he makes until that point. However, while he believes the 8th to be a reference to Link, I'd actually go a different way and say that I think it's a reference to Ganondorf instead. I can only pray he forgives me. And by the way, yes, those 2 are male and the heroines are, female, but given the Gerudo's exclusively woman race and heritage, and the fact that there probably hasn't been a male Gerudo since Ganondorf, which was probably some 10,000 plus years ago, it's pretty safe to assume that their mythological beings would all be female, such as the 7 heroines, who are said to be the guardians of the Gerudo. Anyway, I think the 8th is Ganondorf because of what we know about the 8th themselves. The 8th is said to still to this day have devout followers in the Gerudo Highlands. Your Sheikah Slate straight up tells you this in the detail about the quest. But here's the kickers. You know who's located in the Gerudo Highlands? Not Gerudo, that goofy Yiga clan. The only people to be found anywhere within those mountains are the ex-Sheikah themselves. Their hideout, which has that giant hole in it, which by the way I did a pretty cool theory about a little bit ago, which you should totally go check out via the button on the top right or the link in the description below, is located right smack dab in the middle of the highlands. And 3 Yiga clan members even have a little campsite set up on the surface of one of the mountain peaks. And since it is a fact that the 8th heroine has current worshippers in the highlands to this day, and the Yiga members are the only people who fit that description, and the Yiga worship and hail the return of one Ganon, but yet the heroines are said to be the guardians of the Gerudo and even have the Gerudo triangular design patterns all over them, that leads me to believe that the 8th heroine represents Ganon's human form, Ganondorf, the Gerudo. I doubt the Yiga would be worshipping Link, given that they attempt to assassinate him every other turn and all. So is my reasoning really that simple? Well, for the most part, yeah. But there are a couple other things to point out that'll strengthen the Ganondorf connection. We know the Gerudo made the 8th heroine because of its other location. According to Creating a Champion, the Yiga clan hideout actually used to be a Gerudo archaeological site, and that would probably help explain the Gerudo writing all over the walls in the first room. Speaking of the first room though, there are 8 statues present of the 8 heroines. Now, as NBC points out, the 7 statues out in the big worship area read, quote, the 7 sages, which of course lines up with the Zelda lore that most of us are familiar with. The 7 sages from Ocarina of Time, for instance, which is the game that introduces sages to the series, speaking from a timeline perspective, of course. Now, for as old as the concept as sages are, Ganondorf has been hailed as evil for just as long. But this is where I think things begin to make sense. While most of the Gerudo reacted like Urbosa or Nabooru and were just disgusted that an evil man like Ganondorf would defile the Gerudo's noble name. Remember that in Ocarina of Time, Ganondorf had, quote, his thieves, not just monsters and not Hylians either. He had Gerudo women that were loyal to him. Could this mean that not all of the Gerudo turned on him after his evil intent was revealed to the world following both the child and adult timeline endings to Ocarina of Time? He had a few that still worshipped him and revered him as their king, maybe? What if that clan within the Gerudo of Ganondorf loyalists are the ones who maybe insisted on including Ganondorf with the 7 heroines, who like previously mentioned are defined as the protectors of the Gerudo? They saw him as one of their protectors, so why not include him? Maybe they were responsible for creating the old archaeological site and even digging in the hole in hopes of finding, you should really watch my other theory video, but were eventually all either run out of there or converted away from their Ganondorf worshipping ways. Now, I've taken more time than I wanted to talking about the 8th's identity, but in a nutshell, because of the Yiga's location and choice of worship, I believe the 8th is a reference to Ganondorf. So what the heck is up with its location? At first, I thought the 8th's statue was moved. I thought it was originally actually down there with the other 7 on the desert level. I mean, there's a perfectly sized gap right there. The space in between the orbs and the pedestals around the gap measures about 31 link steps wide, while the other pedestals measure about 16, meaning the gap is precisely twice as wide as the other spaces, giving exactly the amount of room required to fit the 8th's statue and pedestal right here. So I started looking for ways they could have maybe moved the 8th out of there, like looking at the broken wall right behind where the 8th would have been. And by the way, what happened to that wall? It is huge and super solid, and it's just broken in pieces. But anyway, then I went to the actual location of the actual 8th heroine statue and deduced that there's no way the statue came from the land down under. Why? Well, if you look at the 8th's statue, you'll notice that along the edges near the top, it isn't complete. And it's still joined to the rock that it was being carved from. And by the way, you'll also notice that all the statues are probably carved rock. The entire area with the 7 of them down there was probably at one point all just cliffside and has all been carved out. Remember, these statues are the stuff of Gerudo legend. Who knows how many thousands of years have passed since their carving, which would explain all the weathering and naturalizing that's taken place. But the 8th's statue really does look like this here is its origin point. Maybe the Gerudo loyalists just wanted to make their own, so they chose the literal opposite side of their mountain range to carve their statue. But whatever their reasoning, we're finally at the question I wanted to ask. If they were carving this statue, why is the sword up here? Let's take a look at the surroundings and try to grab some hints. At the base of the sword, there lies a sword. Nice. But not just any sword, a very fine Gerudo sword. How interesting. There's also a chest with a Gerudo scimitar in it in one of the hidden pockets along the edge of the strange icy valley, located just a few yards to the north. And speaking of this valley-like chasm, it definitely looks like those flattened sheets of rock were shattered over time, but used to maybe be suspended above this hollow area, creating a walkway or building of sorts underneath. In fact, a lot of the rocks and rock wall around here look suspiciously carved, don't they? I mean, just look at this really interesting ramp that leads either to or away from the 8th's statue. This has got to be man-made, having been hollowed out to allow access to the statue. Looking at the carved rock walls, the ex-Gerudo camp, the Gerudo weapons, and Gerudo architecture, I think this place used to be inhabited by Gerudo. Why they're no longer here, I can't say, but I think the evidence is definitely there, meaning everything we see up here is intentional, including the location of the forgotten sword. And again, at first, I was trying to come up with some way that they may have hauled the sword up to the peak of the summit, but again, I couldn't come up with why they'd do this, or especially how they'd stab it in the solid rock like that. I mean, look at it. At the angle it's resting, there's no way it's not firmly cemented into the rock beneath it, because it hasn't fallen flat on its surface. So then it hit me. What if nothing was moved? If you look at the hands of any of the statues, you'll see by looking closely that their hands are not connected to the swords. They had to have been made separately. Looking again at the sword on the peak, it makes sense now. The angling, the strange positioning between two hollowed out rock walls. The sword is also incomplete. It was being carved up here to then be attached to the Eighth's statue. But for whatever reason, they didn't finish either of these sculptures. The statue is still very much so a part of the rock, and the sword, being built from the top down, over time cracked and fell to its side. But by then there was enough rock and snow built up around its base that it only leaned in the fall and didn't twist. So in the end, nobody moved anything. The Gerudo just stopped building it abruptly. Maybe when the Yiga clan took over the area, who knows? And before I wrap up the video, I had one other very interesting detail to point out. So you remember when I said a couple times there that a lot of this rock wall looks like it may have been carved out by people? Well, has the layout of the random peaks in the highlands ever struck you as, well, a bit too random? Well, if you take the... You know what? Let me just show you. Breath of the Wild, you've done it again.
The outdoors. You know, with everybody staying indoors these days, sometimes I forget what they even are. Are they even real? Is this a simulation? Is this the Matrix? But fortunately for me, I'm doing just fine. I live in the 21st century with this little invention called the internet. I mean, you can do anything on the internet these days. Except for fly. You can't fly yet on the... Did you know that every time you use an unencrypted internet connection to browse social media, shop online, or watch an online video, like this one, the data that you're sending and receiving for any of those websites is literally wide open for anybody to see? I'm not joking. The ways of hacking unencrypted internet connections are known to every other kid out there these days. It's not rocket science. You probably need ExpressVPN. An espresso what? ExpressVPN. You know, the service that provides you with the best virtual private network, giving you the privacy that you need in this day and age. I use it when I'm at work, trying to watch the latest TV show so that my bosses don't keep up to date, if you know what I mean. But people like you who are kind of stuck at home these days could probably use it to mask your IP address, or even watch shows that aren't available in your country from your favorite streaming services like Netflix. Well, that sounds delightful, actually. But do they have the fastest speeds, 24/7 customer support, simple ease of use, #1 ratings from websites like TechRadar and The Verge, and do they have the physical inability to store any of their customers' data, preventing any and all possibilities of a security breach? Yeah? Well, how do I sign up? ExpressVPN is everything I just mentioned and more, and to top it all off, it's so easy to use that even a dunce like me can do it. Eventually. There you go, buddy, I knew you could do it. Find out how you can get 3 months of this fantastic service for free by clicking the link in the description below, or by going online to expressvpn.com/MNB. This offer's only around for a limited time, so what are you waiting for? Go check today. I hate that guy.
Hey guys, thanks so much for watching. Huge thanks to all of my amazing supporters, of which I have some introductions in order. Say a big hello to Valencia 007, Malon, Infinite Curly, and Selena, who have all joined the ranks of my elite. Thank you guys so much for inspiring me every day, and on top of that, choosing to support the channel. Enjoy your benefits, guys, and if you watching are interested in getting your name up here at the end of every video and some awesome benefits like custom emoji, badges, and more, click that giant join button or the link in the description below to find out how. Also down there are links to my social media pages, so stop on by and say hi. That's all I've got for this theory, so I guess I'll be seeing you in my next upload. Until then, my friends, this is MaskedNintendoBandit signing out. Have a great rest of your day. Peace!